This conference will now be recorded.
You do that perfectly, Lindsay, just as I'm about to say something that I don't.
It's Alicia or Holly.
Oh, Alicia and Holly did that. Oh, good. Good. Well, you saved me from saying something. I don't know what, but until I say it usually. 9 o'clock. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. And my agenda just left, which is about par for the course. We do have open forum on the agenda, but I don't believe didn't hear of anybody. No, okay. Yep, none, good. Confirmation of the agenda. I need a mover and a seconder. Brian and Martin, any discussion? Anyone opposed? Okay, that's carried. I don't see Michael. Was he able to make it, or do you know?
I didn't hear from him.
Okay, all right, well, maybe he'll join along. Any declaration of pecuniary interest, you can declare now or at any time. Next, I need a motion to recess council into a special council meeting or into, committee of the whole at, what are we here? 9:02. Sorry, I'm a minute later than I wanted to be there. Do I have a mover and seconder? Jason and Barbara. Okay, any discussion? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Next, I need a motion to appoint a chair. Yeah, I see you, Brian, but I'm trying to. Okay, Brian. Oh, good, you're muted.
I would move that Mr. Woodbury, Mayor Woodbury, chair this meeting.
Do I have a seconder? Jim, any discussion? Anyone opposed? Okay, that's carried. Next, we have Liam's report, 7.1.1. I need a mover and seconder to put it on the table. Brian and Martin. Yep. Okay. Morning, Liam. We'll turn it over to you.
Morning. Just get my screens going here. Okay. So the budget as presented today has a requirement from taxation of $8,766,194, which is an increase of $775,893 from 2021. So I've updated the impact of the blended tax rate of 1%. So 1% is $135,759 because I've changed the assumption from the county tax rate from 2% to 3.75%. And as well as updated the assessment base of the calculation. Some of the numbers hadn't been updated since when I did the initial estimate. So 1% is $135,759. So the current budget as presented, and I could probably make this a little bit bigger. So operating is, so total impact is 5.3% compared to the last budget, which presented at 4.8%. 3.3% operating, 0.5% for special projects, and 1.5% for capital, for a total of 5.3. And that's just a repeat of this last one. So staff went through the budget and made some adjustments. So before I jump to the the adjustments are, we have in the attachment 2, there's 2 different adjustment tabs. One where the adjustments we've made, and then another tab where the proposed adjustments, should council want to reduce taxation impact lower than 5.3. So I just want to remind council as we're going through this that maybe consider limiting service level increases. So the major ones are the bylaw enforcement officer 0.2, digital services is 0.4, before any cuts to capital funding. Because if the capital cuts are made as presented, we're actually reducing less for capital in 2022 by 16,410, which then negatively impacts the 10-year capital plan, which anticipated use of those funds. So that cut becomes basically a lost revenue in perpetuity. So we just want to keep council in that in mind. So I'll go to attachment 2. So in attachment 2, I start off with the balance as of December 8th was 8.6 million or 4.8%. So the revisions to my blended tax rate estimate. So correcting for the assessment base use, that actually saved 0.7, and then changing the county assumption from 3.2, 3.75 from 2%, actually added 0.5%. So the December 8th budget, as adjusted for the new estimated blended tax rate, it would have been at 4.6. So staff went through and made some mostly minor, except for one larger adjustment. So council conferences was reduced by 6,000 based on what council had expressed interest in attending. However, there's an offset down in the committee of adjustment line for, it's called number section 7, so it actually increased by 3,500. So there's a little, so there is some savings there, but it's mostly a shift from council to committee of adjustments. Fire went through their numbers and they actually went up 1,500. Building reviewed their numbers and they increased their estimate of revenues and increased their estimate in legal expense costs, and which affected the contribution to and from reserve. So the original version anticipated taking out 16,000. The new version anticipates putting in 43,000 into their building reserve. So that's $60,000 shift. So the largest impact was a review of the public works wages and benefits. The initial version went to print before we had a chance to review the positions in detail with the public works manager. So after that review was completed, we realized that we were short 106,454 wages for the positions that we had. So that was added in. So that's a 0.7 impact. Roads pickup truck, we removed one of the pickup trucks from the 2022 budget because it was purchased in 2021 and adjusted the reserve contribution accordingly. So it would be no impact again, so no cut to capital contributions because it impacts future needs. Solid waste, we reflected the Carton Council of Canada award for 2,000. Durham Hospital Foundation, we changed the 1,500 to 2,500 as discussed at the last meeting. And I just talked about planning. And then agriculture, we reflected the new tile drain loan that council just passed a bylaw for at the last meeting. So that's an in and an out. So again, to recap, the total budget request is 8.766, which is a 5.3% impact. So maybe I'll pause there to see if there's any questions on the actual adjustments before we start moving towards discussing the proposed adjustments.
Brian?
Thank you, John. Leanne, going back to the the building department, the changes in attachment 2 there. So previously, in the previous column, we were going to use approximately almost $17,000 from reserves to cover, I presume, some expense. Why would we now all of a sudden put $43,000 into reserves rather than using that extra income to offset the increased, say, legal or whatever costs?
Go ahead, Liam.
So, okay, so we have done that. So you see the permit fees line, it was at 450 and now it's at 525. So that's additional 75,000 of revenue.
Yeah.
And then the legal fees were at 35,000. Now they're at 50,000. So that required 15. That's an increase in expenses of 15,000. So the net of those two numbers is 60,000. So we've increased revenue 75,000. We increased revenue 75,000. We've increased expenses by 15,000, which means we had additional $60,000 available, which essentially goes into a reserve since building is self-sufficient.
So again, my question is, why not use that additional revenue that's available to go into reserves to offset the increased costs, sorry.
We have used the additional revenue. The increased right now in the actual adjustments, the increased cost is only the legal fees of 15,000. So revenues went up by 75, expenses went up by 15. Yep. So that we had a net additional dollars of 60,000, which we put into reserves.
So currently then building is a net zero, correct?
Correct.
As proposed. So what I'm saying is, why not use more reserves to bring those costs, the department down more, below zero, so it costs less than last year? What are the reserves in the building department, if I might ask, please?
I believe it's close to 900,000.
So we got almost $1 million sitting in building reserves. It seems to me that building department is supposed to break even. $1 million sitting in reserves is not break even. If we were to pull 135,000 out of reserves and put it into the building department, that would reduce the overall cost of this budget by 1%, roughly.
It would,
that seems
but
like
we're not allowed to
that
do
seems
that.
like an easy win to me.
We're not allowed to use building permit fees to offset taxation.
I understand that, but the building department is still going to cost us some money. Anyway, I'll leave it there.
Okay. Any other questions? Barbara?
So through you, how is the building department affecting our taxation when the building department is supposed to be net zero, self-sufficient, non-tax supportive?
The building department is not affecting the taxation at all. It's a net zero department.
And we're not allowed to use the reserves or funds from permit fees for taxation because building is building and it's separate. So that those reserves would be to perhaps build them an office or get them another vehicle or another inspector.
That's correct. The building reserve can be used for only building related items. So, and I just want to clarify that the building department can't support taxation. However, taxation could support the building department, but we've never done it that way.
Thank you.
Brian?
So I guess another way of asking my question or posing my premise is that we could reduce the building fees to chew into that $1 million reserve. So in effect, the building department could be working at a loss, and it's an indirect tax decrease, I suppose you could put it. And I know that's maybe a little bit dangerous, but nonetheless, it would be a less tax burden on ratepayers that are using the building department. I guess that was, I'm not maybe articulating this very good, but to my mind, $1 million reserve isn't right when in a department that's supposed to be breaking even. So somehow we have to eat into that $1 million tax or reserve rather somehow. So in my mind, I would tell the building department, come back with a budget, a building department budget that reduces your reserve by half as a number. That would be my suggestion. Then if we can't, and I get we can't use it to support general revenues, but we can use that reserve to support the building department.
Okay. Liam, did you want to comment on that?
My comment is that I believe Bev did an analysis of what he thought a appropriate reserve level was, and I don't think he's in this meeting to speak to that though.
Okay. Barb? And then Martin.
So I understand where the deputy mayor is heading with this, and I can appreciate, you know, reducing our building fees or the fees and charges related to building, but then the developers and the people who are building their homes, any of that. But I believe, and it's too bad Bev isn't here, but given the conversations we've had in the past about legal fees and about following through on the people who have not gone through the building department at all, I think we're probably estimating to eat into those reserves in 2022 in legal fees alone. And if we do hire another building inspector to help offload the pressure on the building department, as Brian has indicated in the past, you know, you add a bylaw enforcement officer, you add a building inspector, you got to add a truck and an office and a desk and a laptop. So pretty sure that that's going to eat into the 900,000. It's to a degree, and I would caution suggesting that we cut it by half. Just my opinion.
Okay. Martin?
Thanks, John. Yeah, just I'm reading page 3. The treasurer recommends the council consider limiting the service level increases by law enforcement officer. With what Deputy Mayor Brian Mills said, I can see the logic. Is there any way the building department could pay for the new bylaw enforcement officer? Like, could it go to their wages? Because that combined is a 1% increase, is it not? From tax.
Dave wants to speak to that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around all these figures. That's all. So go ahead. Thank you.
It could be part of it, but only for the building portion that would be bylaw enforcement. So building without a permit, I would say at best that might be 10% of the cost of bylaw enforcement. And by and large, building department expertise is required to enforce those kind of things, but 90% of bylaw enforcement is all the other stuff, noise and just general complaints.
Okay, that's true.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Any other? Yep, no problems. Any other questions or comments on what Liam's covered? Jason?
I kind of tended to agree with Brian. I was looking at there. I'm maybe not use half the reserves, but I was wondering if we could dip into them some to at least negate the percentage increase anyhow. And I like Martin's idea too but you can only fund 15%. I realize that, but yeah, I like Brian's idea, but I don't know if I'd go half the reserves, but I'd like to use some of them maybe.
Yep. Thank you. I agree. I think even if we had no increase in the reserves, would help. You know, if we can decrease them, great, but what we're holding a bit, but no increase would be good on the reserves there. Any other questions or comments on the stuff, all of the stuff that Liam's done so far? Go ahead, Jason.
Just wondering on the public works, we were off by 106,000, which is a 0.7% increase. Our discussions on COLA and all that stuff, how did it change that much?
You want to take that, Liam?
Or where did we miss that? That's a big number.
Well,
Yeah.
I will attempt it. I knew Akash and Jim were the one that went through the actual positions, the list of positions, and I believe there was one that we added in 2021 that wasn't presented in the 2022 list when we created it, and then Jim did some adjustments between. If Jim can add anything to that discussion, or Akash?
Morning, Jim.
Morning, good people. Yeah, it seemed that the additional full-time rusher that was added to the works department last year and approved was not carried forward in the head count. And there's the offset of the one position in Hopeville, the full-time operator cemetery, was deferred till the spring to look at and reevaluate again. And so that was a kind of a missing part of a head count as well.
Okay, thank you. Cash, did you have anything to add? Just...
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing further to add. James covered it. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Wow, that wasn't a long report from you. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, John. Looking at the roads department, I can appreciate that we removed the pickup truck that was purchased this year, but I'm seeing still a contribution to reserves for 60,000. So we're still increasing the roads capital budget by 60,000 by putting that 60,000 into reserves. Why not remove that 60,000 going into reserves, or at the very least pull it out of one-time funding to reduce the net tax rate impact by 60,000.
Okay, go ahead, Liam.
I just want to caution council, so they're not aware that the 2021 budget anticipated issuing some debt for some replacement capital. So right now the projection anticipates using up the roads reserves and rather than issuing debt for replacement capital. So the roads reserves are essentially zero at the end of 2021. So it's very dangerous to not try to keep some money in a reserve for roads.
Brian, you look like you're thinking.
No, that's not what I was thinking,
No.
but I'm not going to say what I was thinking. But anyway, thank you, Liam. I understand your answer. I don't misunderstand me there. I do understand your answer. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on what we've covered or on what Liam's covered so far? Okay, not seeing any. Let's move on. Oh, Barbara.
Well, since we're on this summary of adjustments, is the fire chief here to elaborate on the computer services increase of $4,000?
I see he's signed in.
And that's on the proposed list, I believe, isn't it? Or is it?
That's on the first
sorry, my
page.
mistake.
Two.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So somehow in our draft budgets, it got removed or missing computer services for $4,000. was to bring in a software to help us train firefighters at home due to COVID, especially with our new recruits. This allows us to do our testing online, counts how long it takes them to do their testing, provides a instructional library for them for training. So that should have been in the original draft, that wasn't. So that's why that's in there now. But it is optional. If council doesn't want to see that go through, we can definitely talk about removing that.
Okay, and we could probably get that out of some COVID funding or something. Dave, you wanted to add to that? Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, that could come out of some COVID funding. So, Barb, follow up or
No,
different?
that you captured that, Mayor Woodbury. I was going to suggest the COVID relief funding.
Yeah. Okay. And the truck's moving right along. I see Derek. When do you expect delivery?
So they're hoping to get it out of Quebec hopefully this week, and then we would take delivery on the truck within the first 2 weeks of January, hopefully, if everything goes all right.
Excellent. Excellent. Dave, go ahead.
Just a question for Derek on that one. Is the whole 11,000, including the 7 and the 4 increase, is that all related to that training package?
So the 4,000 is related to the training. There's an increase as well, like from over the years, because don't forget dispatch. We have reports that came through council about 911 and all that going up as well. So.
Okay, no, I was just trying to get a grasp on if any part of the 7,000 is some of their training or to support that COVID stuff. So, but I think we definitely could remove the 4 for COVID.
Too bad we couldn't buy the fire truck out of COVID funding. Brian, go ahead.
Thanks, John. Speaking of the COVID funding, Dave, is there, I presume we still have some funds available from that top up that the province gave us for restart funds or whatever that thing was called. Do you think, in your opinion, and maybe Liam or Dave or maybe both of you could have an opinion, do you think we've used sufficient of that funding to offset any costs in this budget that are related to COVID-19? Or is that to come yet in this meeting?
I'm gonna let Liam take that.
It's always best to speak first, then you can do that. Go ahead, Liam.
So I'm sure there are probably some costs in the 2022 budget that we could argue that are COVID related. I know that I still need to go through the 2021 expenses to pull out anything that can be argued to be COVID related. So this budget, so to answer the quick question shortly is no, that still needs to be done. I don't think it's going to be a huge impact because I have to argue that it's COVID related. So there is some room, but we haven't gone through that yet.
Dave?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Maybe, each department head can go back through their budget and put a COVID impact lens on it. We at staff and department headings, we don't talk about small $4,000 items like that, but if we could catch a few of those, it would definitely be positive. So I think we could push back in departments just to give an overall review and related to what could fit that lens and put it through the Liam test, because that's the final point.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if I could, Mr. Mayor, I'm inclined to think that at this point in the pandemic, I'm not sure that the province is going to be real picky on, costs that are attributed to COVID. If it's remotely related, I'm thinking they're going to fund it. Given the eye that maybe the province has applied to a lot of things in the last little while related to COVID, I'd say they're going to give us a fair bit of leeway as to what we charge to COVID expenses. That would just be my opinion, but thank you.
Let's see what Liam's opinion is.
I agree. As long as we say an operating expense is related to COVID, we can use those funds. So that is why I want to go through a lot of lines. Is obviously I can't go through every complete detail, but in somewhat detail with department heads to see if there's anything that we could argue is COVID, whether or not it's clearly COVID or gray area COVID. I think we need to capture those things. And that would be need going through every line item pretty much with department heads to pull those out.
Lean gray, lean gray.
Okay. I think Barb, and then I think we should
Just
move on.
2 questions with regard to the COVID-related fund. Do we know what's left in that? I mean, we were given a certain amount. It wasn't like we apply for more funding because we didn't use it in the first round. While we can't use it for a capital expense, like an asset of a pickup truck, can we use it for the engine replacement, which is maintenance repair, which would be operational, correct? Coloring outside of the lines a little.
Are you referring to the $15,000 engine replacement of the truck? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. Instead of buying a new one, your proposed adjustment was to, instead of buying a new truck, we're going to fix Phil's truck with a new engine. Would that be operational?
So that is operational, yes.
And so since we are looking for additional vehicles in order to provide more social distancing, that then is COVID related. I'm, like I said, coloring outside of the lines, something to think about. Dave's got his hand up. He's inked a couple of times now.
Yep, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I think with all due respect, to repair something we have, I don't think would be. But I think your original idea of buying a new pickup truck because we wanted to social distance people could be an easier justification.
Except that's capital, right? Except picking up a truck is capital and you can only use it for operating. Liam just said that.
I get that, but anyway.
Color outside the lines, boys.
Coloring outside the lines is difficult. Anyway, I'll let Liam go at it.
Go ahead, Liam.
Thank you.
So if I'm honest, that's unfortunately the game, or the way we can color outside the lines. Like it's operating expense, which essentially gives us a new truck. But no, we can't just go out and buy a new truck with that funds because that is definitely capital.
Thank you. My other question to Liam, through you, Mayor Woodbury, is you have the library adjustments under potential adjustments. Are you suggesting that because the budget of the library is somewhat, I wouldn't say insignificant, but small compared to other departments, and the savings is, $5,000-$6,000, are you suggesting we not adjust the library operational budget?
Well, that's the in the second part of this,
right?
That we haven't got to yet.
Right, but my question, Mayor Woodbury, is why isn't it in the proposed adjustments as opposed to the possible adjustments? Because the library board actually had a special meeting to find savings, and it'd be interesting to know. That's the only question, and then we can.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Liam.
So the reality is we basically had this budget ready to print before the library board's meeting that Tuesday night before I had to publish the Wednesday morning. So I had that on the proposed tab because at that time it was proposed. And before I went to print, I didn't move it to the actual adjustment tab.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Yep. Okay, so if we want to go on to the next bit, Liam.
Okay, so the items on the potential adjustments tab. So the building department is the first one, where the CBO was suggesting we hire an additional building inspector for a cost of $57,000, which would require additional furniture and a computer. And I'm wondering if maybe we should discuss the merits of these as we go through them one by one, or do we want to do this after I present them all?
I don't see where anyone has any preferences right now, so let's go through them all and then we can go back and just run.
Okay. So the next one that I put on the proposed adjustments is just the bylaw enforcement officer. Again, I'm not saying it's not, bylaw enforcement isn't needed, but additional person is a service level increase. So that's why I put it on the proposed adjustments tab. And just to clarify, this $29,000 impact, because the reality is if we don't hire that bylaw enforcement officer, the existing building staff would have to dedicate a percent of their time to do some bylaw enforcement as opposed to the level of bylaw enforcement that we would have if we had that full-time officer. In public works, Jim is suggested the deferral of the Holstein Pit land expansion, which was offset with some solar fund use for $135,000. So that's a capital impact. The Stevens Pit 2 road fencing, tree planting, stripping, reducing the scope from $60,000 to $20,000. And then the other pickup truck, rather than buying a new pickup truck, replace the engine in the existing pickup truck. So savings in capital. Oh, there's 50. Yeah, savings in capital, but then there'd be an increase in operating expenses. So that's not correctly presented there on the right side. It is a net 25 impact, just some operating and some capital. And then reducing the roll-off containers, instead of buying 2, only buy 1. The library operational adjustments, the library board has approved those changes, I believe, as presented. I just want to note that the library board is, I believe, the digital services assistant. They're recommending to, instead of a full year, only hire it for 8 months, so hire it in April rather than in January. So that's what the library board has approved. And I just want council to be aware that the library digital services assistant as a whole, even though 42,000 would still be there, that is a service level increase for council to be aware of. And in the economic development, the parking lot work for 20,000 and Hamlet laid signs for 10,000 would be a capital cut proposed. So the total of all the proposed adjustments as presented is 272,000, which would save 0.2%, bring the 5.3 down to 3.3.
Okay, Barb, you have a question?
One question for now. Are any of these capital proposed adjustments that I know that you don't recommend us reducing capital, are there any of these that could be associated with the modernization fund? I know that we wouldn't want to dip into a modernization fund or reserves for a new position unless it was perhaps only for an interim period, like the bylaw enforcement officer. There was suggested at the last meeting that perhaps we try a contract position for a year and see the benefit that we can achieve from that position. And then I was thinking about what was I thinking about? Any other items from the capital that could, one-time expenses that could be part of the modernization fund? Thank you.
Okay, Liam.
So in the existing capital list, there is one project already that Jim has in there, which uses 100,000 of the modernization funds. And I think that's the only one. I'm trying to remember what exactly it was called, AVL equipment or something.
Oh, Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, that's for the vehicle locating and GPS systems, upgrading our current systems to a more real-time status, as well as tablets and other software to go with the packages.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Dave, and then Brian, I got you up next.
Liam, if we converted some capital purchases to lease payments, could that not reflect as more of an operating cost and allocate it to COVID funding?
Yeah, so if we had an operating lease, well, then that would be an operating cost, not a capital cost. And then
So maybe we should be leasing our pickup trucks, is my comment.
Yep, that's something definitely I think could look into. Go ahead, Liam.
And the other thing that's not currently presented that just occurred to me is the bylaw enforcement officer. We argued that the increased bylaw enforcement in 2021 budget was COVID related and wanted to use COVID funds for that. Whereas I don't think we argued a significant number of that in 2022. So perhaps that is an area where we can argue that this new bylaw enforcement officer is a COVID related expense.
Mm-hmm. Brian?
Yeah, I like Liam's thinking there. Yeah, he's coming around. That's good. My question was related around those capital items, the Holstein and the Stevens Pit upgrades, so to speak, and the Hamlet blades. All of those capital items. And I understand from Liam's earlier comments that the roads reserves are pretty well kaput. I'm wondering, is there not other reserves that could be used for those one-time expenses, i.e. the Holstein pit or the Stevens pit? I mean, those aren't recurring items. I haven't got the full list of reserves in front of me here, but I'm thinking the township probably has fairly healthy reserves overall. And I'm wondering to accomplish one or some of that capital work, could we not use some reserves from somewhere?
Okay, Liam?
So most of the reserve lines are dedicated for a future year purpose. The ones that are open for any purpose really is the tax stabilization reserve. So, and I could see the argument for the Holstein pit land expansion to be considered a one-time cost, which you could take out the tax stabilization rather than capital taxation.
Okay, and I see Jim came right up on the screen there, so go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so in discussion with our team members there from Public Works out that way, and there's a vein that we haven't really got into at the west of the pit that we currently have going, and that's because the vein is mostly apparently got clay in it, and discovering that with the landfill cell creation here. We're proposing a clay liner, so I'm going to need that clay. So I've asked the guys that we do some boreholes in there and figure out how much gravel's still there to get a hold of, and plus utilize the clay that we need for the landfill. So there is a possibly win-win there for a little bit of material anyways, and which could shove off the potential for the landfill the pit expansion there. The discussions with the owner there is he's wondering about maybe some sort of lease or royalty type tonnage fee payment. So it might not be a one-time shot. We're still talking with that owner about that expansion, but any expansion that way will still have to go through the whole MNRF process. There's no short circuit anymore for expansion. So.
Okay.
That being said, if I might, Mr. Mayor, that being said, Jim, it's always easier to expand a current pit, than it is to start a brand new one. So I like the idea of the tonnage, the lease for the material out of that area. I just wouldn't want us to lose the opportunity to acquire that material relatively economically. That's all. That's fine. Thank you.
Yep, agreed. Other questions? Barbara?
Through you to that point, I know that the Stevens pit, there's been delays. Are we any closer to moving forward on that pit? And I know, Jim, you've mentioned in the past that we're getting to a point where if we don't start moving forward on either expanding the Holstein pit or getting the Stevens pit approved, we're going to be buying gravel. Any news on the Stevens pit inching forward at all?
Who'd like this one, Dave or Jim? Jim?
Talking with our consultant engineer, the ministry is considering some other ways to have a fee possibly, but still we want to get into some discussions with them. Hopefully here early in the new year. Dave and I have been discussing getting back on that track, but no real movement there. And yeah, we're close to being out at Hopeville here. This might be the last extraction this year here for Hopeville.
Okay.
I don't think we want to be buying gravel.
Dave, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that has to be a goal to resolve that issue in the first half of 2022. And like Jim said, find out more about what the ministries is doing. And if there's not a way in sight of the ministries resolving this thing as they've committed to in relation to this, study that they were going to do on cumulative impact, I think we'll have to take it in our own hands and come to some resolution with that whole accommodation piece.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Jason?
Just regarding that whole pit thing, like the money we're spending on consultants and this and that and waiting for it, I think we all know what's holding it up. I'd like to just cut a check. But anyhow, the way this land is increased, what kind of money could we get for that? And, you'd bank a lot of money to buy gravel off somebody. I don't know. I'm just thinking if it's going to be another 3-4 years, the way the price of this land is increased, maybe we could just sell it and have 700 or 800. I don't know. I'm just a question.
Mm-hmm. Dave?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, but I think we can gain the value of the gravel back. Of course, we want to, and we can have a relationship in a purchase and sale agreement of the farm when we get that license sorted out, and have an extraction period of 30 years or whatever we think is appropriate. But I think we can obviously sell the farm for likely possibly double what we paid for it and still get, our gravel out as well.
Mhm. Any other questions or comments? Jim?
Well, it's something that I can bring forward talking about gravel. I'm not sure, I'm not in favor of it, but it is an operational cost and council could consider it. Would be, currently we do every other year maintenance gravel, the north section and then the south section. Council could consider doing it in quadrants, applying maintenance gravel on every 4 years. This would probably make roads pretty tough, but it's a possibility if you want to save money as far as applying gravel. That's a concept council could adopt, but again, I'm not totally in favor of that. And as well, to go along hand in hand with that, we could look at calcium. We've done it in the past. Instead of using 35%, go to 20%. 20%, we don't get as good as results. And we're just finding now, going back to 35% calcium, that that residue is hanging in the roads and helping with dust. So it's, again, not something necessarily that I recommend, but it's a possibility council can consider, and we could bring back those numbers if you wish to pursue either of those options. And the other thing would be to put no calcium, or which usually is 20%, on no winter maintenance roads. Stop applying calcium to those roads.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I'm not in favor of letting the roads get leaving it longer between the maintenance on the gravel roads. I think the way we're doing it now is plenty long enough for that, at least. Jason?
Yeah, no, I want to echo your comments. I don't want to go back on the road at all. That's not what I was saying. I've just, this whole pit thing gets pretty annoying, paying consultants, waiting on the government. That's not what I was saying. I don't want to take from the roads at all. Just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah. And to me, that's always been the frustrating part of council and getting things done, is the different ministries and the amount of time and red tape that is involved in a lot of these things, that all it does is cost money and delay things, which cost more money. So, as far as the calcium goes, my opinion is carry on as we have been. The roads that are no winter maintenance, maybe those are the roads that we don't do. But other than that, I think what we have going is working well. So I wouldn't like to see the roads get not as well maintained as they are right now. Any other comments? Jason?
If I can, one more. I guess it's to Dave,
Sure.
or Jim, maybe. I think we've talked about it before on the pit. What is the actual holdup? Is it what is the actual holdup?
On the gravel pits?
Yeah. Sorry, pits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, Dave?
Yes. So the holdup is SON have an agreement that they wanted us to execute, and council the day basically, that was they wanted to come and assess when we're removing cover, and it's supposed to be a confidential agreement. And we were at the same point, had a commitment from the ministry that they were going to do this cumulative impact study that would address the court ruling on the TP Hayes decision. That has never been done. And here just recently, they've basically told us that they are not going to be able to finish it. It's going to take longer than they anticipated. So we've asked Bill Walker about it and the premier when we had discussions. And what we need to do now is engage with the ministry and see if there's any change. And if there's no change, or if this rumor that's going around about torque fees solving the problem, then that may be the way to go. But that needs to be determined in the new year. And by mid-year, either follow the lead of the ministry solving this thing, or we're gonna have to solve it by, like you said earlier, writing a check.
Well, I'd like to see us write a check and let's get our gravel and then we can sell the farm.
Yeah, it's another one of those things that's gone on forever, and I'm not sure if it'll be that easy for us, but I think you're right. We got to get on with it. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment, so Liam, we can move on.
So that's the end of the proposed list as presented, though I just, Councillor Frew had mentioned about the Police Services Board wanting to create an reserve for their
Yes.
access, which isn't in the budget anywhere right now.
Yep.
So I didn't know if Councillor Frew wanted to speak to that.
Hey, Jim, did you want to mention any more about that?
Yeah. The Services Board is the only department in this council that doesn't have a reserve. And as you know, Mr. Mayor, we had a request from the OPP for a printer. We had to come cap in hand to council for that approval. That's a little ridiculous. When you have $900,000 in the building department that's supposed to break even, why in heaven's name can't we have a reserve for the police services? This is the second year I've made this request. Seems to fall on deaf ears all the time.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a number in mind of what we should have in reserve for the Police Services Board?
I'm not asking for funds to be added to the Police Services Board. If we have the budget that we have now, if there's individuals that can't attend a council meeting or a conference or any other function, the monies that would normally be turned back into general government goes into that reserve. It's not a massive amount.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it would just offset. I agree. Now, my only issue with it would be what happens once it goes to a single person on that, or if that's what happens is down the road. But I think that's a reserve for now that we could set for next year, because I think there will be expenses. So I agree with you, and it'll have to be reassessed in years to come. So would that be a problem, Liam, to just set up a small reserve that way?
It's possible. It's not a problem. It's just at the moment we have the tax stabilization reserve where everybody's operating surpluses go into, and then which is available to everybody. So what Councillor is asking for is a reserve specifically for the Police Services Board to access, which is not what we're doing in other operating departments, but it can be done.
If I may,
Yep.
we're the
Go
only
ahead.
police service. We're the only police service in the Grey Bruce outfit that doesn't have a reserve.
Okay. Barbara?
Through you, with regard to that, the library does have a reserve for their budget, but the first I've heard of a printer that the OPP requires, it sounds a little like, why are we buying equipment for the OPP? Isn't that part of what they get paid the $1.1 million for? And I agree with you, Mayor Woodbury. What happens to the reserve when, if the ministry ever follows through on the, the new Police Services Board concept?
The printer came to the Police Services Board, and that was one of the things they were setting up in the office at the library, so that they would have draw the officers in there more to use, because the printers that they have in the car They don't, they're on the paper like the old fax paper. And so they can't print some of their legal documents on those at the scene because they fade over time and they're no good in court. And so this would pull them into the office. And the Police Services Board thought it was a good idea and support the idea of us helping out with drawing them into the office to be in Southgate more often.
Mm-hmm.
Dave,
Okay, well, I still have the question about your concern about what happens to the reserve if and when the ministry ever follows through on their requirement to reconfigure, reorganize the police services boards for Grey and Bruce County. Still, we were rushed into making a decision and we still have heard nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a reserve can be, once the board is changed, something can happen with that reserve down the road, but we don't know how far that is. Jim, you want to add something, and then Dave?
Yeah, the way that the board has been operating in the past is that any surplus goes right back to general government. Same thing would happen with the reserve.
Yeah, thank you. Dave?
Yeah, what I would suggest is, because of the volatility of the police service boards right now, is, I mean, we could call the reserve of police capital or police ESO capital reserve, that the money would be by and large spent in supporting the ESO office in Dundalk with printers or computers or whatever other kind of things. We bought bicycles for them in the past, but that kind of thing, that would take the or put a definition on of what the purpose would be more so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. Barb?
Through you to Liam, once a purpose is assigned to a reserve, though, how easy is it to just say, okay, we're not going to use it for that, we're going to transfer it to tax stabilization or whatever the result is? I thought that once you assign a label to a reserve, depending on, I guess maybe that's more development charges, but can't explain it to me, Liam. I'm not explaining it well, but I think you know where I'm going with this.
And the one thing, just before I go to you, Liam, is when it would change, our Southgate Police Services Board would no longer exist. It would be a different police services board, the Grey Bruce one or whatever. Go ahead, Liam.
So the reserve created would just be a normal operating reserve, or a normal discretionary reserve that council can change to another purpose at any time. It's not restricted as far as what council does with it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or suggestions on the items from this schedule that Liam's gone over? Is there things that we want out or not? Lindsay, would you like?
No, I just had a question. I think Councillor Shearson's in the meeting. I just want to make sure
Yes.
that's in. Okay.
I saw him. There he is.
Okay.
Hi, Mike. Yep. Okay. So it's Brian.
Thank you, John. Just in response to your question there, my own thinking would suggest that, well, first of all, I want to thank Liam for his work here on the proposed changes. The only thing I would not want to see changed is the bylaw enforcement officer. And I know it's an increase in service, but I mean, there's only a couple things that I keep hearing over and over and over again from ratepayers, and one of them is bylaw enforcement. And it's a headache for staff, current staff, and it's a headache for council. So I would very much rather see the bylaw enforcement officer, the dedicated bylaw enforcement officer that's in the proposed budget, stay there. But in regards to the other changes, I'm fine with those. Thank you.
Okay. And I agree. right now, if we can do any bylaw enforcement, we're doing it at a higher cost. Although it's out of the building department, it's still at a higher cost. Barbara?
Through you to perhaps Lindsay, I know that there's a transfer of funds to Committee of Adjustment, and there is a net savings. I'm wondering if there is a summary, if you have had an opportunity to summarize the conferences that we selected and the anticipated costs, if it is in person or virtual participation. I'm not able to, or I'm not going to be going to the OCA conference in June, so that can come off. And since that conference is in Blue Mountains, I wasn't, if I had been able to attend, I wasn't going to stay overnight, so that would be some savings. And I'm just wondering if a summary of those conferences and options available would be worthwhile. I know it's not a huge savings, but I know that FCM is offering a virtual participation as opposed to in person, which could save upwards of probably $2,000 just in hotels and airfare alone, meals, mileage. So I'm wondering if a summary of those conferences and expenses would help us put things into perspective.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
So I can prepare that. I do have actuals for Roma and for OGRA because they're already open for registration. So basically, I'm just kind of gave a general for FCM and OSUM. And so I am sticking with my 12,000 for right now, and that would be everything in person, other than Roma is virtual. But that would be attending FCM in person. So what I've budgeted is actual for Roma is 850. Actual for OGRA is 2,100 and change. FCM I'm budgeting 3,500, and OSUM 4,000 for 2 members. But that so that just comes in just over 11,000, I believe. So I'm sticking with 12 just because, you know, numbers can fluctuate. I'm hoping it comes in less.
Yeah, with the way they're canceling things, I wouldn't doubt it if Good Roads is changes too. Barbara?
So to that, it would be help. So is Roma 850 including hotels?
So Roma's virtual.
Yeah, there is no
virtual.
in-person.
Right, it's virtual. You're right. Given the fact that FCM is offering a virtual option, which is 20 to 30% less than the registration fee they anticipate, which they haven't even published yet, I'm wondering if other, like you said, John, OGRA is likely going to end up hopping back into virtual. What happens to the registration fee that you've already paid to attend in person type thing? And what happens to hotels that perhaps are, you know, non-refundable? I'm not sure what has been set up for these conferences in light of the possibility of not having in-person participation. Lindsay?
Yep, go ahead, Lindsay.
So for OGRA, I mean, we book under, like, the hotels set aside a block for conferences. So I'm assuming that if something happened that they had to switch to virtual, they would be giving at least refunds, maybe not. We might have to pay for 1 day. That's usually a cancellation, you have to pay 1 day, but I would assume under the circumstances, because they block off a block in the hotel, that would be refunded, at least, you know, 75% of it, I would hope. I mean, I would definitely argue that with them, but I can't see them not giving back something when it was their choice to switch it back to, or the COVID's problem to switch it back to virtual.
Okay.
Through you, Mayor?
Yep, go ahead.
Just not to belabor it, but I did read somewhere that hotels are not giving refunds, and it wouldn't be up to the conference to refund it, because the hotels are are struggling, obviously, and for the province to, you know, just, okay, no more in-person, it's not safe, whatever. I would appreciate, and I would request, if necessary, a notice of motion to request a summary of our conferences that we have selected, an estimate of in-person costs versus any savings if we were to participate in them virtually. Because I could participate in an OCA conference virtually, but I may not be able to attend in person.
Yeah, I can prepare that for the January 19th council meeting.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else on the rest of this these proposals?
See, Jim Ellis has his hand up.
Oh, does he? Okay. Yep. There you are, Jim. Go ahead. Thanks, Brian.
Just for information, received an email again this morning from the Good Roads Association, and they're still looking for early bird registration, and there's no talk currently of virtual, but again, yeah, that can change tomorrow, but that's currently the pace they're on.
Okay.
And
yeah.
if I might add, Mayor Woodbury,
Sure.
we did get in on the early bird, so that they have been registered under early bird. And the policy that we're currently booked under for the hotel is if we cancel, we pay 1 day. So the most we would be on the hook for is 1 day if it's switched to virtual.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I'm not seeing many more comments. Go ahead, Liam.
One thing that I just remembered was Jim had the OSIF FC funding that we're getting for 2022 was over 400,000 compared to in the budget right now it's 108. So Jim had proposed actually changing one of his capital projects for those funds, and that is not reflected right now. And perhaps Jim wants to discuss that with council since it's not in the current presentation.
Okay. Let's see. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, with that good news, we had looked at Side Road 73 and looked at doing the cold in place as opposed to single surface treatment and get that back to pavement. And that would take the total OSIF funding plus the 54,000 I think we had for single surface treatment. That would combine those totals to more than likely give us enough to do that pavement application for that road section.
Okay.
Is something for consideration.
Yeah. Thank you. Barbara?
Through you to Jim, so that proposal, the 300,000 isn't in the budget for capital. You're proposing a change in the project that would use up the OSIF funding. It doesn't actually reduce our capital budget though, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, that would be the correct way of our way of thinking, yes.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay. Anything else from anyone? Michael, you have something?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I missed the first part, so I'm a little behind here. But I still, like the number I'm seeing is too much. I'm still kind of wondering. I'm trying to pull up my thing from our meeting on the 15th, where it showed the amount of people that were in the library this year versus last year. And then I was also looking at the from the meeting on the 15th, it showed the amount of building permits this year and where we were projected to be by the end of this year for the last couple of years. And when I look at the numbers between those two, to me, it doesn't warrant that we're going to add more people to both of those departments at this time. So I'm not in favor of adding to bylaw or to the library.
Okay. Barb, you had your hand up again?
Through you, could Councillor Shearson clarify versus building inspector or bylaw? Because there's two different positions. Building inspectors are not tax supported, and the bylaw enforcement officer would be a portion covered by the building department, which would then help reduce the amount of time being spent by building officials on bylaw enforcement. I just want to clarify when you said building and then you said bylaw.
It's the bylaw, I guess, would be the one that I'm looking at, because I was looking at back in 2019, it was like 400 and some permits that we had 2 people, Bev and one other individual, looking after. This year we're going up by about 50%, and we already added 1 more person, and now we want to add 1 more, and they were already doing both jobs. So I understand that with people at home, they had more time to complain about things and write things and do things. So if we ever get back to a normal, I don't think we really need to be spending another person out there. And I know that it's funded by the building department, but as Councillor Flew mentioned, we've got like $800,000 sitting in a reserve account there that, we need to be looking at reducing our costs for building. With this money sitting there, there's no need of money sitting like that. If we're going to start buying smarter vehicles and stuff, I don't know why we need such a big surplus, and the people that are building right now are putting this money up there. So I think we need to make sure that we're not gouging what I classify at this point. And then the library, I mean, you see the amount of patrons that's been in there this year, and if people that need digital, from her report that she put on at the last council meeting, to me, another person there is not warranted.
Any other comments? Sorry, Martin, I was filling in for you. I was on mute. Okay. As far as the bylaw one, I agree with what Brian was saying earlier, that that's one that we get the most complaints on, and I'd like to see something go forward with that. So we'll see. Any other questions or comment? Barbara? And then Jason.
So there is still the option of that bylaw enforcement officer being a contract for 1 year to see how it goes. Not sure, but and certainly not the preference, because eventually I think it would be nice to be able to clear the backlog and then see how things go once we get back to some form of normal. I don't think we'll ever get back to complete normal. And that digital services person is also proposed to work with the economic development officer. So is Terry here or Lacey here that could speak to how that digital services person wages would be shared with economic development, and how that will benefit economic development and our downtown revitalization and
Lacey,
supporting our businesses.
You there, Lacey?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm having some internet connection issues this morning.
Yep, we can hear you.
Excellent.
We can't see your smiling face, but we can hear you.
Well, let's see if it holds with both of them.
Okay. Well, whatever works for you.
So as of right now, I haven't fully discussed those details with Terry. She has talked to me about how the library can assist with this cultural channel she's trying to create. Currently, Grey Highlands Public Library has this, they have that as their, under the library and the museum. And I think that's where she's sort of basing this idea off of. So there's definitely some room for further discussion, but I see it as an opportunity for the library to promote our own services on the cultural channel and assist Terry with it, and potentially share the cost of getting filming equipment that we can use here at the library. And having patrons check out that equipment included in our imagination stations. So there's some details to be worked out, but I definitely think it's an opportunity for this position to work with the township and not just at the library. I don't know if Terry has more to add to that or not, but that's sort of how I see it.
Okay, thanks. Terry, did you want to add?
Yeah, that was very well done, Lacey. And we are just in preliminary conversations. We've been chatting about a cultural or community channel, an economic development and community channel. We've been working on some shop local videos with Grey County, and also with a grant with the Chamber of Commerce group from Grey County. So a digital person, it can be a content creator actually for social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, all those fun things. And also for YouTube and the cultural channel. Grey Highlands was successful in getting a grant, I believe, from the Ontario Trillium Fund. And they, not only do they run the channel at the library and the museum, but they also run it on Eastlink Television on channel 251, I believe. So this position, we just had some very preliminary conversations that it would actually be a benefit to everyone in the municipality, because they would be more so a digital content creator. But again, we were just having some preliminary conversations, and it can be promoting library programs, community programs, such as the Santa Claus Parade or the Halloween or whatever other community events are coming up. And it would be so digital content creation and digital promotion of all the programs, even for the recreation department as well. So hockey programs, skating programs, cricket programs. So we just had some preliminary conversations about that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Martin, and then Jason.
Yeah, just one more with the bylaw enforcement. I don't think, I tend to agree with you and Brian there, John. With the backlog we have right now, you know, put it in there, because it just needs to be looked after. I don't know, you talked about having it as a contract position. I don't think we should get rid of it. If it works as a contract, if things die off in the next year and a half, that's fine, but there is such a backlog. That position's needed. So as far as the other proposed changes, I have no problem with them.
Okay, thank you. Jason.
Yeah, well, I do agree with Brian that that's probably the most complaints we get is about bylaw stuff. I don't want to hire another person either, but I think I was the one that brought up the contract position, and I don't see a problem with it personally. I know I brought it up before in the past. I think there've been talks saying you don't get the good people applying. Well, I just want to see results. I don't want to see it that there's still people complaining about bylaw issues in a year. So if it was a contract position, you know, if he or she is going to work at it and do a good job, then they know they're going to have a job after that. So, but if it doesn't, you know, if the results aren't there and we're still where we are now, we have an out, I think. So I'm on the fence, but if it is, I would like to see it as a contract position, just for that reason.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Barbara?
Just to follow up on that, if it were a contract position, would it fall under the COVID relief funding or the modernization fund? And a second question was, there was an announcement, and forgive me, it used to be called OMP funding, but I'm not sure what it's called now, but it doubled.
OSIF fixed contribution funds doubled.
To 300.
Went from 108 to 456.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So that's the original OMP funding.
No, OMP is different from OSIF.
And what was that? And how are we using it?
OMP, that's just operating dollars that we take in offset our operating costs. That's what OMP is for.
Right. And wasn't that something like 800,000 or 600? Can't remember the announcement.
I could check. I think it went up 30,000 or something.
Oh, okay. No, so not significantly. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Okay, not seeing any other questions or comments on this, so we can move on. Liam?
So essentially, that's the changes or proposed changes that from the last version. So I guess we just need direction from council. What, if anything, they want changed, or if this can be discussed with at the public information meeting on January 11th or not. So as for a law enforcement officer, from the discussion I'm hearing, I'm wondering if it's a matter of leaving in that position at 58,362 and then potentially taking that either 58,000 or a number less than that out of COVID funding to cause a reduction.
Okay, yeah. I think that works for me. I don't see anyone jumping on that. So any of the other stuff, do we want to go with all the other cuts that are on here? Jason?
Sorry, so if we hired the, I misunderstood here for a minute, I had to take a phone call quick, sorry. If we hire the bylaw officer under the COVID funding, that will still negate the tax increase? Or that'll basically leave this as the same as it is now? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Liam.
Well, that will help out 2022 budget. And if that position happens to become permanent, then we'll have to worry about the taxation impact at that point, because at this point, COVID funds are to be spent in 2022 and not after.
Yeah.
Right. But if we did, which I don't think we will, agree on a contract position, that would cover it this year or for 2022, and then we could look at it again.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Brian, and then Barb.
Thank you, John. So if I understand correctly, Liam, if we proposed all of the additional adjustments which you've put here, save and except for the bylaw protection officer or the protection services changes of 29,000 or almost 30,000 rather, the net tax or the net blended tax increase or rate would be 3.5%. Is that correct? Because the protection services was a net minus 0.2. Is that a fair?
I'm relying on Akesh to summarize the numbers. Since I'm sharing my screen, I can't do calculations myself.
But yeah, okay, that's fair enough. But I'm seeing here, if we adopted all of the changes that are proposed, we'd be down to 3.3%. But if we left the building or the bylaw enforcement officer in there, that would push that back up to 3.5. Mr. Desai would maybe confirm that if he's available.
I hear he's good with numbers. There he is.
Don't believe it. Don't believe it.
If you could give me a couple of minutes, Your Worship, I can have that answer for you.
You keep calling me names. Okay, Barb, we'll look at your question while he's ciphering.
It was along the same lines as Brian's. What would the final number be? And I noted that 3.3. If we were to take the proposed capital changes, which potential capital adjustments, which our treasurer strongly didn't recommend, that we considered taking some of those things out, but yeah, we'll let Akesh do some of his creative number crunching.
Yeah, Your Worship.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. So if we removed the adjustment for the bylaw enforcement person and left all and approved all the others, the increase we would be looking at would be 3.7%.
Okay. Go ahead, Liam. I see your mic
So
went on.
I'm just trying to mentally go through the numbers because unfortunately I can't crunch them myself, but if the bylaw enforcement officer is presented with a 0.2 cut, so if that doesn't go in there, then just on that alone, 3.3 becomes 3.5, not 3.7. So, and that's not considering COVID funding as impact, which I'm not quite sure if we were to reflect that or not. So if we were just to remove that adjustment section alone for properties protection services, we would be at 3.5, not instead of 3.3. So I'm not sure what Akash has brought else in his calculations.
Okay, well.
I apologize, Your Worship. Liam's right. I was looking at the wrong number. I apologize.
Oh, okay, so Brian was right about the numbers. I'll let Brian do a follow-up, then Martin, then Barb.
I was just going to say, let the minutes reflect that Brian was right and Cash was wrong. But anyway, that's fine. So the next step here is to go to a public meeting to see what the public thinks of this. So I mean, it's not a definite thing today for sure. But I think if we at least leave the bylaw enforcement officer in there for now, I suspect we'll hear very clearly from the public, or I hope we would, whether they're agreeable to the notion of upstaffing for bylaw enforcement, and you know, we can judge from there whether it's 3.5 or 3.7 is not really a strong argument at this point, at least. But I think if we leave it there for now, we'll get a good read on what the public thinks of it. Even if it is 3.7, I would suggest it as long as it's under 4%. With inflation running at nearly 5%, I'm thinking we're getting pretty close. So those are my thoughts for now, anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Martin and Barb.
Yeah, thank you, John. In a way, that makes sense what Brian just said, but really, if we do take it out and there is a public meeting, there's still a chance for the public to say, well, why did you take that out? There's so many things we'd like that put back in. My point here is just from the last meeting, it was 4.8, and we did go back to department heads and staff to bring it into 3.5, and that's exactly what they've done. So when you consider it was at 5.3 with the county, I think it's pretty darn good that we got down to 3.5 with all the work the staff has done. So if this goes to the public meeting like this, that's a good start.
Yep, I agree. And hopefully we get more than just a handful of people to have input. Barb?
Through you, thank you. Keeping in mind, though, that it was not recommended that we not pursue the Holstein Pit expansion because but maybe there's some creative, I don't know. And that was a 1%. So if, I think that, and the library. So that actually keeps the library in or takes it out?
Liam?
The digital services person, because right now you had it under potential. It's going to be one of the proposed adjustments with the changes that the library board came up with, but as it is presented today.
So if that gets approved as presented, the digital assistant would be in there starting April. Their start date would be April 1st. They're in there for 8 months of 2022 rather than 12 months of 2022.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, Jason?
Okay, I kind of agree with Michael on this one on the library. I'm not sure at this time, the way everything is, that we need to hire another person for that. I wasn't realizing that was in part of this. Just my opinion. This time I'm wondering if we need the other person or not.
Okay, Martin?
Well, I think what Terry said and what Lacey said, that it's going to be used by Home Township. We could have this discussion with the economic development officer wanting a full-time assistant, because she's going to get doing so much in the years to come. So one way or another, there's going to be another contract position for somebody. So the library needs it. The economic development officer needs it as well. So it's covering two areas, not just the library. So it should stay in there.
Okay. Barb, and then Jason?
Well, Jason has a follow-up though.
Okay, Jason?
Well, it's fine. I was just, if it come out, I wondered, Liam, what percentage that would make a difference on.
Roughly 0.3.
Okay. Okay, Barb?
So under economic development, we're talking hamlet blade signs and parking lot. What parking lot is proposed not to be paved now? And would that not be part of the modernization fund with the hamlet signs? Possibly, potentially. I'm more concerned about the parking lot. If it's the parking lot in downtown Dundalk that we're not going to pave now, or somewhere else.
There's Terry.
Okay, so the parking lot, Dave, that's actually your project there. I'm not sure which parking lot that is. I think it is one of the parking lots in downtown.
I'm going to let Jim speak to that, the parking lot.
Okay. There's Jim.
We are carrying budget for the Proton Street parking lot. There was talk of doing something at the medical center, an expansion there. I don't know if that's your budget line item, but it's, to my knowledge, it's not the Proton parking lot.
Yeah, there's nothing for Southeast Gray paving or anything. That's totally their project. The only thing might be is there some confusion between we weren't going to develop in 2022 behind the west side of the downtown. That was going to be something we're going to evolve as we transition from medical center, old medical center to new medical center. So that wouldn't be a 2022 project. Maybe the wrong year's been put on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So nobody seems to know, so I guess we don't need it. It can come out then. Thank you.
Okay. So any more, Jim, go ahead.
Well, can we check the roads? Because I believe parking lots in roads 2022.
No, I know for certain the Proton Street parking lot's in roads. I'm just trying to, unfortunately my computer's running really slow. I'm trying to get to the economic development capital page to see what the description was.
And I think that was supposed to be like 40,000. And I also think that the hamlet signs, if that's for there was also some funding that we're sitting on for the Highway 10 signs and the way signs in downtown Dundalk. Not sure where that is going, but we do have the modernization fund. So maybe with the COVID relief and the modernization fund, we'll be able to save some of the items as opposed to cutting them entirely.
Well, even the hamlet signs, I don't know if we want to look at the solar or the eco park funds that
Right.
because they go through the whole community. So
Thank you.
Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we could also look at possibly doing some grant funding applications to support that hamlet sign from more of a cultural and historic tourism standpoint. So that could be a strategy to try and fund 50% through a grant process.
Yeah. Okay. Liam?
So the description on that 20,000 is downtown parking east side of Proton, 20,000.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? How does anyone else feel about the library position, the technical position there? Is that something to leave in for part of the year, or is that something that should be cut at this point? Okay, that's pretty quiet.
No, I think it should be left in there, John.
Okay.
As it doubles over to 2 departments.
Yep. Lacey, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add that under the Library Act, council doesn't do the hiring, it's the library board. So council could cut our budget in order for us not to have that position, but the ultimate decision to whether to hire or not or create a new position is under the library board.
Okay. Yep.
True.
So, yeah, I heard where did I hear the voice?
It was Martin.
Oh, Martin? Oh, you already
Well,
said you were in favor.
Yeah, I just said, that was a good point that Lacey brought up, because if it's needed, we'd have to cut away some other stuff from the budget. So it would get done one way or another, so.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Jason?
I guess this is the Lacey. How I did see the figures. How many patrons are in the library in a day, roughly?
Well, curbside makes that a little more difficult. We were averaging before COVID well into the thousands, so anywhere from 1,000 to 1,700 a month for library visits. And then we also had our online presence. So that's what this position would be is for our online presence, which has only been exacerbated through COVID, and it's only been more prevalent that we need to have more online presence with our online databases, with our virtual programming, which even if we get back to whatever our new normal is, that virtual presence, that virtual programming isn't going anywhere. And that's where staff are sort of feeling that pressure is we're going to be going hopefully back to a new normal and in-person programming and more people in the building, but also doubling our workload because we have this new virtual online presence. So that's what this digital services position is looking into, as well as potentially helping economic development. And our library services have changed, and we've talked about this position pre-COVID, and now it's just we're that much busier when it comes to our online presence as a library. We're one of the few libraries in the area that don't have a position like this. So it's not like this is something we're just coming up with. We're trying to catch up with what other libraries have had for years.
Okay, thanks.
So when you say digital, sorry, when you say digital services, like what is that providing?
So it'll be virtual programming is one element. It'll be our online e-resources. So we're looking at some new online courses that people can take for free that'll help local businesses. And then individuals get courses that they need for employment. We have one called World Book, which is for our kids and teens, so to help them with their schoolwork. So that position will be promoting and helping training on that. The other part of the position will be doing our tech help here in the library. We already have a wait list for some seniors that are looking to get some tech training. We've been asked from the Seniors Advisory and from the Young at Heart if we could look into some very specific training for seniors, like how to use Facebook, how to use email. So that kind of training, that would be quite a hefty job for us to take on right now with our current staffing. So that's some of the other things this job's looking at, as well as our go-to person for our everyday troubleshooting before we go to infinity.
Okay. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, just to follow up, okay, I understand that, but I'm not a technical person. Can't people find that on their own on the internet or the computer rather than going through the library? I don't know. I just have a problem with it. Can't people find that on their own on the computer? I know it's hard for people. I can't hardly run this thing, but don't know if it's going to warrant another person to do that technical side. That's where I'm at. I just wondered. And you say 1,700 visits a month, was it? I missed you there.
I'd have to go and look at the exact numbers pre-COVID, but that's what we were pre-COVID. Numbers have been down a little bit, but our online presence is continuing to grow steadily. So like our ebooks, for instance, we're getting a lot more checkouts there. I think our numbers will look back to normal when the kids can start coming back into the library.
Okay. I'm not as confident things will come back to normal. I think they're going to settle probably somewhere in between, because a lot of people are starting to get very comfortable with the online stuff and things like that. So I think you'll see it come back to somewhat normal, but I agree. I think you're going to have very much increased online stuff as time goes on. Did you want to add something, Terry?
Yeah, and there is one more program that I think that would be beneficial to all of the businesses in Southgate. It's called Digital Main Street. And what that program is, it's a program that's run by a lot of the municipalities, and Grey Highlands has been very successful at it. And it teaches businesses how it actually sets up their website for them. It teaches them how to sell online. So whenever there are these lockdowns, they can, instead of having people in the store, they can have curbside pickup, they can have shipping. They can also then expand their market to worldwide markets. So any business in Southgate can sign up for this Digital Main Street program, and it's run by the library and economic development concurrently. And any business can learn how to set up a website and how to set up e-commerce. So Jason, so something like that, it's pretty hard to learn by yourself. So for example, for your farm, if you wanted to sell items from your farm, how would you set up your website and sell those items? So it's teaching people how to have those skills.
Okay, thank you. Barbara?
And then sometimes people get iPads for Christmas and they don't even know how to turn it on. So we've had those people come into the library. I would like to, not to change the subject, but this parking lot east side of Croton Street, is that our commitment to pave the parking lot surrounding the new drugstore? Is this the economic development piece of it, perhaps? Public Works, Roads has a portion of it. somebody needs to know what that $20,000 was for. And if we're pulling that out of the capital adjustment, what commitment are we falling short on?
So
Yeah.
I didn't
Go ahead,
actually
Terry.
put that number in the budget, so I'm not sure what, I'll let Dave speak to that.
Yep, go ahead, Dave.
It sounds like we better go back and reassess that, whether that was for specifically lighting or something, but we'll get together with roads and put that budget together, because I would imagine it's to cover some other costs related to the development.
Yep.
Yeah, it may not actually be paving, as you said, Dave. It might be lighting.
So these proposals, oh, Liam, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify that the paving around the building that the Councilor Doreen referred to, that is in the roads budget. So that's not what this paving is. This is parking. This is something different from that.
I'm thinking just off the top of my head, it may be the piece of the parking lot between CIBC and the other building there. So, but we'll have to see. Jason, go ahead.
Well, forgive me, but like, we have it in there. How do we not know what it is? How do we not know what it is? It's wrote down there. It's $20,000 and we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I just don't understand that.
I have to check into the details on that to see exactly what it is before that goes ahead.
Yeah.
Dave?
We'll go back and assess the overall budget with the roads department as to the paving, the lighting, the drainage. There's multiple things there to look into. So whether we've assessed some to economic development, we'll have to take a look at the overall project cost. And there maybe we can pull that back. We're not sure yet until we see.
Okay. So these proposals as they stand right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, we'd like to leave in the bylaw enforcement, but the other proposals go as written unless someone makes a motion to the contrary of that. I'm not seeing any. Brian.
So just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, if I might, number two under the potential adjustments includes a number of things in addition to the bylaw enforcement officer. So when we refer to leaving that in, are we talking about the entire protective services changes or just the bylaw enforcement officer?
What I understand at this point is the bylaw enforcement officer.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Liam?
So just to clarify, what all those 4 lines accomplish is the fact that if we didn't hire the bylaw enforcement officer, the reality is the building staff would have to be involved in some capacity in bylaw enforcement. So that was just moving some of the wages from the building to bylaw. So if the bylaw enforcement officer is hired, that shift of wages from building to bylaw won't occur. So if we keep the bylaw enforcement officer, none of those changes happen.
Right. Okay. So the net change is the 20 or almost 30,000 there. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Barbara?
But we're keeping that.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
For now.
Yeah. At least going to the public meeting.
Right.
Okay, Barb?
Question with regard to whether it's permitted. We wouldn't get, to Lindsay, we wouldn't get the summary of our conferences until the 19th of January after we have the public meeting. Is it possible to share that information with each of us individually so we don't reply all or provide comments to each other but perhaps when we look at it, we might be able to give you feedback, Lindsay, as to, you know what, I'm happy to do it virtually, or, oh, you know, now that I'm looking at my calendar, you know, I can't go. And so that may be incorporated into the budget. It probably, in the grand scheme of things, not a great savings, but every little bit helps.
So if I might, Mayor,
Sure. Yeah.
if, from what I've understood from this conversation, we're going to present this at the public meeting as is, with the proposed cuts other than the bylaw enforcement
Correct.
thing. So I think I can get the information, but it won't change what goes to the 11th. Like, I can send it ahead of time, but we wouldn't be considering it until Liam has the February 2nd council meeting. So I think it would still be okay to come to the 19th, but I could be wrong.
As long as we have time to consider it, because I think individually we can make decisions to help in that regard. As long as, so if we get it on the 19th, it can be incorporated into a February 2nd meeting. I'm okay with that then. Thank you.
That's what I'm thinking. Liam is fine with that. I can get the information by the end of the day, but.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Liam.
So I'm just looking at the proposed schedule here. I guess we put the 19th was the committee of the whole meeting, but that's a regular council meeting day, is it not now?
Yes, night meeting now.
Okay, so when we develop the timeline for the budget discussions, that I guess I don't have that. I didn't think it was a regular council meeting day, but obviously it is. So then that was a if needed meeting. So I guess at this meeting, we also need to decide, obviously we're having the PIM on January 11th, but do we need another committee of the whole to discuss the budget before the February 2nd regular meeting or not? And those changes for council conferences, I don't think it's a significant number. So I don't think it's critical that that is incorporated into the January 11th public information meeting, but that's council's decision if they want that shown.
Okay. Barb?
Given that our council meeting got changed to an evening meeting starting at 6, and it is our last kick at the can of the operating budget as well, which could take additional time, plus a regular agenda, perhaps we should be considering an earlier start that day or a different day prior to February 2nd. Because I'm not certain that, you know, doing a regular council meeting without, I mean, obviously there's the option of another meeting on the 12th, but is it possible to even start earlier on the 19th?
We could do a committee of the whole at, depending how long it would be, it could be at 4 or 5. And then we would adjourn that meeting and then start the regular council meeting at 6. Or we do it on the 12th, but that would mean, yeah, we'd be back. The agenda would go out on the 6th. So that would give Liam 2 days after Christmas to get that together.
I'm interested in seeing the outcome of all of this discussion before we, obviously it's not going to, we're going to see it on the 11th for the public meeting. So I guess, I don't know. What does the rest of council think? But I'm concerned that our council committee of the whole meeting on the 19th is going to be a jam-packed agenda, given that we're also discussing and recommending the operating budget.
Okay. Brian?
Thank you, John. I would suggest that we go with what we've got for the public meeting. We're at 3.5%. I don't know what other members of council's expectations were, but as I said earlier, we're significantly under inflation. So as William, or Liam rather, pointed out a couple meetings ago, if you're less than inflation, you're falling behind. We're not gaining. I know the taxes are going to go up, but they're not going up at the rate of inflation. So I don't think there's a lot of discussion left. I mean, I'll, you know, I won't say that definitively until I have until I hear from the public meeting, but I'm satisfied with what council has put forward here at what the staff has put forward here at 3.5%. There may be some little twigs here and there that still need to be or could be made, but I don't think there's a need for a separate meeting. I think whatever the dates were now, I think they're sufficient.
Okay, and the other thing is to just add to that, Brian, I agree with you, but if we do need a meeting, I'd prefer to see us do it maybe on the 18th of instead of the 19th, the 18th or something, because I think if we get into budget discussions again, you never know how long it's going to take or what's going to happen, and I don't know if my butt can take a budget meeting and a council meeting the same evening. So we can work out what to do about that, but I also don't want to rush Liam and give him just 2 days to prepare for getting an agenda out and things like that. So, and getting the information out. So I think if we leave it that way, we're probably leave it as is and we can change it as we see into the new year. Okay, Martin?
Yeah, thanks, John. Since this was printed up before the new calendar and it said 9 o'clock, would council be okay? Because if you're gonna be coming to a 3:30, 4 o'clock meeting anyway, could we not have a committee of the whole to discuss the budget at 9 and then we'll have a break till 7? Would that be okay? That works.
I don't know. Well, like I say, let's see what happens here in the new year, and we can decide that as we go.
Okay. And just follow up as far as the 3.5, with that 4.8 that originally came out, yes, that was closer to the rate of inflation. But as I said previously, the staff did what council asked them to do to bring it lower, and I don't think we should go any lower than that. I do tend to agree with Brian and Liam that if we keep going back, it's not good. So 5.3 probably would not be palatable, but 3.5 do the reverse is. So that's my take on today's discussion. So
okay, Barbara, and then Jason.
Just to clarify, that January 19th meeting is at 7 p.m., not 9 a.m., right? Because we changed it?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's in the evening.
6 p.m.
Yep. Jason.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify that we are going to the public with a 3.5, and I am happy with that. Everybody did what we asked, and I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's a tough budget year there's got to be increases, and so nobody's happy with that part, but I think if we cut any more, we're going backwards too much. Okay, so Lindsay, Liam, is that clear what we're proposing? And then Barb?
I think I have it clear in my head, though the resolution will have to be adjusted to reflect that.
Okay, Lindsay?
So I have an amendment wrote. I think it's right based on our discussion. So I'll share my screen.
Okay.
If we're ready for that.
Yep.
Before we get to the resolution, Mayor Woodbury?
Yep.
I had a question about the evening meetings. Until we change the procedure bylaw, is it a motion to go past 9 now that we're starting at 6, or is it still a motion to go past 10? Because that gives us an extra hour.
I don't know that, we can check, Lindsay can let us know about that.
Thanks.
Okay.
So Liam, I know you like when I'm specific for the budget motions, so
Mhm.
I think that's what we want. It's a bit wordy, but
I think that accomplishes it.
Okay. Do we have someone that would like to move this?
I'll move it.
Ryan and Jim seconds. Does anyone, any more discussion on this? Is anyone opposed to this motion? Or the amendment, I guess. Okay, and that is carried. So in committee of the whole, we have to vote on the amended motion then? Yeah. Okay, so we have the amended motion. Any discussion on that? Okay, is anyone opposed to the amended motion? And that is carried. Hey, guess what? We're winning. Does anyone want to make a motion that we resolve back to council at 11:06? Barb and Martin. Any discussion on that? Anyone opposed? Okay, that's carried. We are back in council. So need mover and seconder for 9.1 that council approve the 2022 budget as presented. That be presented, not as, be presented at the public meeting. And be presented to consider at council February 2nd. And that doesn't have to be amended. We have that in the.
I'll make the amendments as per what we just passed.
Okay, so with the amendment as we've just passed it. I need a mover and seconder, please. Or did I do
Can
that?
I see it on the screen, please?
I'm going to go with a definite maybe. Oh no, there it is. Okay. So I'll need a mover and seconder when this is.
Mayor Woodbury?
Yep.
So that's not the resolution in 9.1. This is the resolution that came out of committee of the whole.
Yeah.
I'll make them, I just have to copy and paste it into the new one. It'll just be that, it'll be the same thing though. I can do those changes right now if you'd like.
So the original motion said that council approved the 2022 budget as presented, be considered for approval at the February 2nd, 2022. So we're actually accepting the draft 2022 budget as amended. Like, that's where I'm confused, and I want to make sure what I'm voting on.
Okay, the motion
because we're considering it for approval at the February 2nd meeting. We're presenting the 2022 budget in draft form at the public meeting. Thank you. If you can help clarify it for me.
Yep, the motion says that we're receiving this budget as information. Next line is that we approve that the 2022 budget be presented at the public information meeting. We're not approving the budget. We're saying we approve it be presented to the public. And that as presented, be considered for approval at the February 2nd. So we're not approving anything.
That would help me a great deal, that we consider approval at the February. Thank you, Mayor Woodbury.
Yeah, well, that's actually what I have in the motion on 9.1.
It's not what I'm reading, but okay.
Okay, that's
There
what
is
I
no
have.
consider for approval.
That's what I have on, it's on eScribe, the one.
Right, but it says that council approved the 2022 budget with amendments to, anyway, sorry, Lindsay's working her magic, but
Yeah.
I have a problem with that council approved the 2022 budget. I think that the council consider approval at the February 2nd meeting, but the way it's written, it's saying that we approve the budget.
Okay. There.
It says we approve that the budget be presented with amendments. There's no comma in there. So as John said, we're not approving the budget, we're approving that it be presented with amendments at the public meeting.
But there's
Agree.
another clause that says that the problem is that we're reading one on the screen and the one that's in the agenda is different. And Lindsay's trying to incorporate everything.
Okay, I'll stop.
So the one that's in the agenda for 9.1 is being amended based on what happened in committee of the whole, that we just amended it. That's our practice. Like when something's amended in committee of the whole, we resolve back to special counsel and the motion is amended per what the committee approved. So that's what I would have done in the minutes and that's what I'll do. So it just basically is amended automatically because of what the committee amended.
So what it is the one on the screen is the motion, and if we can have a mover and seconder, then we can discuss it. Jim will move it. Martin will second it. Okay, now we can discuss it. Barbara.
So the third clause, Lindsay, I don't think you need to repeat what you've written in the second clause. I think that council consider approval of the 2022 budget at a future meeting or at the February 2nd meeting. The third clause seems to be a repeat of the second clause, right, as it is on the screen at the moment.
So I just copied it based on what we approved at the committee, but that's fine. We can.
Yep. Dave?
I think the difference though with this third clause is that it gives direction that the bylaw enforcement officer as an FTE will be removed, and that will be taken into consideration at the future meeting.
Not removed, kept, and it's included in the second clause.
Well, it's going to be anyway.
Yeah.
I just know from previous experience, Liam likes me to be specific on what council is proposing to keep and cut. So that's why I put it in both. So it's consistent that we know we're leaving the bylaw enforcement FTE and bringing back that.
Yeah. Okay, so without an amendment, it is how it stands.
I propose an amendment that the third clause simply state that because we've already included it in the second clause, unless I'm mistaken, that the third clause read that council consider approval of the 2022 budget at the February 2nd council meeting or at a future meeting, whichever is council's wish. But the third clause and the second clause, right as it's written right now, is just a repeat of the second clause.
Is there a seconder? Martin will second it. Any discussion? I have a feeling this isn't going to be a one side or another, so I'll call the question anyways. Is anyone opposed to the amendment? Better do a count because there's a couple of us at least.
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. Recorded vote for the amendment to the main motion to amend the third clause. Councillor Shelton?
Yes.
Mayor Woodbury?
No.
Councillor Rice?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Milne,
Nay.
Councillor Frew,
No.
Councillor Dobrain,
In favor.
Councillor Shearson, Councillor Shearson, are you there? Councillor Shearson? He told me he came in on his cell phone. Mike, we can't hear you. Councillor Shearson? Okay, I will have to mark Councillor Shearson as absent. So by a vote of 3-3, that is lost.
Okay, so we're back to the original motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, is anyone opposed to the motion? Okay, we have at least one, so I'll let you do the vote on this.
Yes, can you hear me? Hello?
Michael? Yeah.
Yeah, it's me. I was saying yes to that last one, but you guys couldn't hear me for some reason.
Okay.
So we marked you absent, Councillor Shearson. I called your name right a few times. Council wants to, I mean, it's been called as a lost motion.
Okay. Well,
Motion to reconsider.
Okay.
Okay, you want a motion to reconsider, Barb?
Yes, please.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Martin? So what does the, is this just a straight vote, or does it have to, is this one of the ones that has to be 2/3?
It'll have to be 2/3, I believe, without just going off memory. We'll do a recorded vote.
Okay.
Mayor, Madam Clerk, the vote has to be on whether or not it's a motion to reconsider is 2/3, and then it would just put the motion back on the table.
Sorry, that's what I was meaning, like the motion to reconsider would need to be a 2/3 vote.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have a motion to reconsider the amendment, but this is just for the motion to reconsider to put it on the table. So recorded vote, Councillor Frew,
Oh.
Deputy Mayor Milne,
Nay.
Councillor Rice,
Yes.
Councillor Shipston,
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Dobrain,
Yes.
Councillor Shearson,
Yes.
Mayor Woodbury.
No.
By a vote of 4-3, that's carried.
No.
So now we're back to the.
If it has to be 2/3 though.
You need 5.
Sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, my math is off.
Has the cash been coaching you?
No, I apologize. So that's lost.
Okay. So we're back to the original motion, and I've called the question on that. So if you want to do the vote, Lindsay.
Sure, thank you, Mayor Woodbury. So recorded vote on the motion for 9.1 as it's on the screen there. Councillor Dobrain?
Nope.
Councillor Shearson?
Nope.
Councillor Frew?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Milne?
Yay.
Mayor Woodbury?
Yes.
Councillor Rice?
No.
Councillor Shipston?
No.
Vote of 3-4, that has lost.
Okay, so basically what we've said is that that we're not going to approve that this goes to public meeting, and we've said that with the amendments for the person in bylaw enforcement. So what I'm sorry, I'm at a bit of a loss here on this because I'm not sure where to go here. Dave?
Can you pull the resolution back up, Lindsay?
The one that just lost?
Yes.
I'd just like some understanding on, besides the wording on being doubled in the first sentence of the second and third ones, what we don't like about the motion. That's what I'm struggling with.
I think we have to reflect, when it comes back up, I think we have to reflect that the motion does say two different things. We're going to bring it to the information meeting as the first, or I believe the second clause. And then the third clause, basically, we're going to bring it back for council consideration at a future meeting, which is anticipated to be in February, to consider and approve the final budget. So it does say two different things. It maybe is repetitive, but it does say two different things when you look at the two resolutions in their entirety.
Lindsay?
Do we have a problem bringing it up?
No, I can. I just want it, like, so by that losing, essentially, we're not giving any direction at all to staff.
At this point, we've canceled the public meeting and we're not giving direction. That's correct.
Yeah, so I'll bring it back up, but I agree with Dave, like it's just basically saying that we're bringing it back with the bylaw enforcement, all the other cuts other than the bylaw enforcement FTE. And yes, I agree, it might be a little bit wordy, but it's still giving Liam the direction he needs to bring it back to council with just the bylaw enforcement FTE kept. So without any direction, with it sitting as lost, Liam has nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
So
I guess we need a motion.
To reconsider.
Brian?
I would ask Councillor DeBreen to propose a motion if that would be satisfactory.
Okay. Barbara?
I propose a reconsideration to include February 2nd in the third clause. So it's a motion to reconsider, and then we'll make an amendment to the motion.
Yeah. So just to reconsider to get it back on the floor.
Okay. Is anyone opposed to reconsidering this? Okay.
Need a seconder.
Second, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Is anyone going to second this? Martin? Okay. Any discussion on reconsidering this? Anyone opposed to reconsidering? Okay. Declare that passed. So we can reconsider the original motion now. Any discussion? Or a mover and seconder on it? I guess we need a new mover and seconder.
So we need an amendment to amend the third clause, basically the same amendment we had before, that the third clause read that council consider approval of the 2022 budget at the February 2nd council meeting. So this is a new amendment.
Well, actually, what we have first is we've just decided to reconsider the original motion. We don't have a motion for an amendment yet. Any discussion on the original motion? Martin and Barbara?
Yeah, well, with the original motion, with the two different wordings, it did get me confused. I certainly don't want to stop a public meeting, and I don't want to stop any direction from for the Treasury Department to move forward with the budget. I will admit I got really bamboozled with all the wording there. So, yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Yep. Barbara?
So if it makes Liam more comfortable to be repetitive, then that's fine. The reconsideration, as you say, Mayor Woodbury, is to reconsider the motion as it failed the last time. All I'm asking is that instead of it saying approval at a future meeting, that it be approved, consideration of approval at the February 2nd council meeting. With Lindsay recommending that we repeat the information, I'm fine with the clerk's recommendation. Just amend it to include February 2nd.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Jim? You'll second it? Okay. Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, I have no problem with it, but to me, it doesn't say anything different than it did before, because consider approving it, and at a future meeting, that'll be up to council anyway, so I have no problem with it. Okay, anyone opposed to the
we're voting on the amendment.
Just the amendment. Anyone opposed
Mayor
to the
Woodbury?
amendment? Yeah,
Mayor
go
Woodbury?
ahead.
The only reason I'm adding February 2nd is to get it back on the table.
No, we don't need an amendment to February 2nd to get it back on the table. We already have the schedules, and council will read it or hear it as we do, and depending what we hear on the public meeting. But it's on the table, so we can vote on it. Anyone opposed to the amendment? Okay, that is carried. We're back to the original motion as amended. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Anyone opposed? That is carried. So then we have confirming bylaw. I need a mover and seconder, please. Martin and Jason, any discussion on the confirming bylaw? Hearing none. Lindsay, I'll let you do this vote.
Recorded vote for the confirming bylaw. Councillor Rice,
Yes.
Councillor Shipston,
Yes.
Mayor Woodbury,
Yes.
Councillor Shearson,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Milne,
Yep.
Councillor DeBreen,
In favor?
Councillor Frew, Councillor Frew.
Yes.
I vote of 7-0, that's carried.
Okay, thank you. And Brian moves that we adjourn. So thank you, everybody, and staff, thank you, especially with all the work that was put into these changes. It's not easy, and you guys do a great job. And just on top of that, I'd just like to wish everybody a safe and Merry Christmas. Things are changing incredibly quick. So just, keep your heads up and see what, stay safe. Thanks, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.